Welcome to GFW Pro and welcome to the GFW Pro Introduction webinar. My name is Ryan Sarsfield. I'm with the Commodities and Finance team at Global Forest Watch at the World Resources Institute. We're going to take about 30 minutes and walk through the basics of how GFW Pro works, how you get data into the system, what the analyses tell you, and a few other items. We won't cover everything that Pro can do or every little detail, but we'll talk through basically what you need to know to get started. And there'll be more webinars later, but we want to just get you going. So we're going to start right in from here. When we log in, by now you should have a login, we hope, and you'll have your username and password. As you enter that in, you'll find that you'll get an email. I've set it up to show what that looks like. You'll get this screen next. Every time you log in, you're going to need a token, and those tokens will be a 6-digit number arriving in your inbox. When you pull that out, you can verify, and then it'll take you to the next screen, which will be your locations. Now, this is what you'll see when you come in if you've already uploaded some data. What we've got are data that are put in by the user. In this case, this is my data. And below that, we've got some data that's built into the system as a public resource, including administrative areas. These are all the states, provinces, districts, departments across the world. Protected areas like national parks and others from the World Database on Protected Areas. And then some palm oil data with palm oil mills, oil palm concessions, and RSPO palm concessions. Across the top, we've got our dashboard. We'll come back to some of these later, but the dashboard is where you'll find alert data for deforestation and fires, the map, which looks a lot like the Global Forest Watch map. We'll come back to that. Profiles for managing the users that you have on your account in your organization or company. Here you can change the language if you'd like to watch this or use the system in Spanish. And finally, the log out. Let's do a quick tour of the profile system here. This is the data that you enter to create an account. And below that, you'll see the users, both those that have an account created and those that are active. Just a note, there's 2 steps to that process. You need to create a new user, set their access level, and then also activate them separately. That's something that administrators can do. Coming back here to locations, we've got our locations, as I mentioned, here on the right, but on the left, this is how you get data into the system. So the system's designed to take the data that you're interested in, give you ways to get it into the system in a standardized format, and then give you analyses based on those data. So we've got 2 main ways to do that. You can add a single location, one at a time, in a few different ways. Then you can also add them uploaded. You can upload them in mass, up to 1,500 locations at a time. If you're doing a single location, I'll show you how that works. You can upload either via an address, if you have a very good idea of that address's accuracy in a rural area. You can do it by coordinates with latitude and longitude. You can do it by drawing a shape, which I'll show you on the map later. And finally, by uploading a shapefile or a KML or KMZ file. These are geographic files that will give you the outline of the location you want to use. So you'll have to choose either investment or commodity. If you're in the financial realm and you'd like to include something as an investment, you can do that here. It won't change the kind of analyses that come out on the other side, but it structures things a bit differently for the kind of data you can include with the geographic data as you upload it. If you're in a commodity supply chain, then commodity will probably make the most sense. So I'll show you how that goes. I'm going to pick commodity and then uploading a shapefile and then add a location. That will take me to this screen. So as we go through here, you'll see lots of different fields. And the thing to keep in mind is there's actually a relatively few number of them that are required. And you'll know they're required because it will have an asterisk like that near it. There's many other kinds of data that you can put in if you like. These are for internal management within your company. If you've got code for a particular location or particular client or particular criterion that you need to manage the data within the system, you can put that here, but it won't change the analyses on the other side, and they're not required to use the system in the first place. So there's no need to update, to upload or include sensitive data if you'd rather not. So I'm going to pick a file from here just as a quick sample. Let's go with shapefile. That's my generic location here. And the system shows it as being in Paraguay. That's a good sign. It means that it's reading it correctly. So as I go down here, I can walk through, put in any name for the location I like. That can help me organize it later on. And I can select one of these formats. This gives me different fields to enter in. So if I'm working in a cattle ranch context, the kind of data that I might put in here will be different than others. But again, it's dependent on whether or not there's an asterisk. So the asterisk tells me that this is required, but all of these others are not required. For all of them, there's 3 attribute fields that you can enter that are custom. So if you have something that's not found on any of these data sets or structures, you can feel free to enter in your own and then your own additional values that correspond to the field. So we've got all these options here. You can also do a generic or other if it doesn't fit in here, if you're working in some other commodity that's not listed. And then finally at the bottom, you can add to an existing list if you've got a list that includes these things with the same format, or you can create a new list and you can name it what you like. And then we'll save here. I'm not going to do that right now, but that's how it would work. And I'll show you how to do multiple uploads. I'm going to go back to locations. And again, on the left side of the screen, as we scroll down, we'll see the multiple upload interface. Now this is a bit more complicated, but for good reason. It will save you a tremendous amount of time to not have to do each location individually. You can do up to 1,500 locations and a total file size of 5 megabytes. And here too, we have given you different formats for the templates that we require to upload into the system. You can do it a few different ways, either with a set of points and then a selected radius around those points that will create a circle for a supply shed, or if you're modeling a particular location for which you only have a point. And you can also add shape files or KML or KMZ when you do know the location. You can download those templates here and then adjust your data into it. And there's more information on that in the how-to guide, which you can likewise download here, and we'll go into great detail on everything in the system. So let's go through here to upload locations. And this will largely look similar. We're entering in the same kinds of data as the single upload interface, except that it's done mostly via the template, so you don't have to fill it out manually. Here we've got, let's go with a commodity, and then we'll pick palm oil. And again, this is one of these things that's optional. And then we'll click next. So here we have, within the palm oil, we've got 4 different possibilities. And I'm going to pick palm oil mill. And then I could also download the template so I didn't get it on the previous screen. But here I'm going to browse and go back into my own files and pick out this particular file that's got the locations I'm looking for. You'll notice that some of these are zipped files. These are the geographic files like a shape file, which contain multiple files. This one is just an Excel file, again, in the template that you can download and work from. Because it's points and radii. So we'll add that in here. The system will take just a second, and great, it's done uploading. Looking below, this is showing those same fields, but we don't need to enter them here because it's all within the file we just uploaded. And then we'll click next. And what the system does is look at what's in that file you've uploaded and verify that all of them are put in the right format. And conveniently, it'll tell you if they're not in the right format, it'll mark it. So if something has a typo, if your coordinates happen to put something off in the ocean accidentally, the system will let you know that it's not quite right and gives you a chance to edit it here. So that's really nice. In this case, I want to upload all of these, so I will select all. And since I've got no errors here and everything looks good, I'll go to the next screen. And we will name this whatever we want to for our particular context. We're going to call it Webinar Test 2. And we're going to create this new list. We could also add to this list, but we're going to do a new one for the moment. And then we're going to save there. Now we see that the system is saying we successfully uploaded the list. Great news. We'll hit OK. This will take us back to the page we started on, and we will see the list has been successfully added. It's grayed out for the moment. So what the system does is for the bulk of the analyses, it will take some time, often very quickly, but it will take a little bit of time to get it into the system and analyze it because it's working through a large number of locations through a large number of analyses. But you only have to do that the first time you upload it, which is convenient because later when you come back and look at this list, it will already be good to go. And at the same time, the system's emailed me and said that the system's processing, and then it'll email me again once it's ready to go. So this will usually be just a few minutes, unless you have a very large list with a large number of locations, and it might be longer than that. But you only have to do that the first time, and then you're good to go. So from here, let's look at one of our lists that are already set up. We're going to look at this webinar ag investments from the Webinar Corporation. We've got a lot of different locations here. These happen to be in South America, but we're working across a few different countries and a couple different commodities. As we go into that list, we will see some initial criteria and some initial analyses. This is basically just to give us a sense of what we're seeing and a window into particular details without giving us the whole analysis just yet. But if we want to see areas that, for example, have a lot of forest originally, or there's a lot of tree cover loss, there's some overlap with protected areas and so on, this is a way to see that at the outset without getting into the analysis for all of them. So from here, we can pick one or all of these locations. I'm going to pick all of them for the moment. And we can see here two different things. This one's grayed out commodity risk. This will make sense when we come back to the palm side of things. But for now, we're looking at soybeans and cattle, and we're working in South America, so we're in the forest change part of it. From here, actually, if we wanted to, we can look at different parts of the data that we've uploaded, as I mentioned, when we did the templates or we uploaded the individual upload. We can select among the different fields that we uploaded initially, and that lets us look through the whole thing. So if we've got more than 1,000 locations on this particular list, we might want to sort by certification, for example. We might want to find a particular location. We can look by name alphabetically and so on. And we can filter by size or location or country, things like that. So let's just dig into what might otherwise be a very large list. But for now, we'll just keep all of the locations in here. We're going to go to the forest change, and we're going to click on View Diagnostic. So this will show us all of the lovely analyses that come out that are already built in, because this system or this particular list has already been analyzed. We get a little taste of the map. Look up here. You can see there's these large areas in a couple different countries in South America. And we can also look at the same list on the larger map, and we'll come back to that later. At the top, we've got some headline stats about what these sites collectively are like, the amount of tree cover originally, if there's overlap with protected areas. We do see a little bit of that, so that's something to keep in mind, and the total size. So we've got a lot of rather large locations in this particular data set, almost 6 million hectares. So it's pretty enormous, but this is all analyzed and fit into the same analysis here. And we can see that we're looking at 46 locations across the entire list, but this could likewise be just a single location if we were interested in just one at a time. As we scroll down, this is one of our main analyses. We're showing the annual tree cover loss across all of these years. We've got up to 2017, and we'll be showing 2018 a little bit later this year, but very soon. And we can look at different aspects of this, including where we've got overlap with protected areas and tree cover loss within that data set. And we do see a little bit here from year to year. We can look at these individual years and individual numbers. We could also look at just the protected areas if we were curious, for example. And if we weren't concerned with going all the way back to 2001, we could also adjust the years. So let's say the years 2008 to 2013 were of particular interest, so we can look at just that if we want to. And likewise, the numbers and all the stats on this particular chart will change accordingly as we adjust these numbers. Below this chart, we see a rehashing of the same data. It's a way to look at how things were and how they are now as a percentage change. And these numbers will correspond to what you're seeing up here collectively. And below that, we're looking at regional data. So these data adjust automatically in the system according to what region of the world you're looking at. So if you're looking at Southeast Asia, you won't see data that's relevant to South America and vice versa. In this particular case, we've got soybeans in this data set, areas that overlap with soybeans. In this context right now, this is soy on tree cover loss for the Cerrado in Brazil, and we'll be adding soy data for the rest of South America later this year. And this is showing us the history of tree cover loss under the soy footprint. So it gives us a good way to look at how things are going relative to a particular cutoff date, and we can likewise adjust those years. If we were concerned with official data in Brazil, we could look at produce data for the Amazon. Since we're not in the Amazon, we don't see any data here. And if we wanted to look at biomes in Brazil in particular, we can see that actually within this data set for those locations in Brazil, it's about 98% in the Cerrado and only 1.4% in the Mata Atlântica. So it gives us a sense of the different categories of land use rules that might be relevant to those spots. So that's a little bit of South America. Let's go back and look at locations in Southeast Asia for palm oil. Back to the list, and we'll go to Webinar Palm Oil Corp list. This will look pretty similar to the last round, but instead of looking at soy and cattle, we're looking at palm oil mill locations and the areas around them. And structured roughly the same, we can likewise filter the columns and look at different ordering of the list. And here we can go to the forest chains just as we did before, but instead of regional data for South America, we'll see regional data for Southeast Asia. You'll see much the same data up here, but with things added like peat. So this won't be relevant in South America, but we do see it for Southeast Asia. And we see across this data set of 7.2 million hectares, we've got about 4% of that overlaps with peat landscapes. And likewise, that's active here in the sensitive areas chart. We can look at these one at a time, just peat, for example, and all of the others. And as we scroll down to the regional data, we don't see things relevant for South America. We see relevance for Southeast Asia, and we can turn on, turn off any of these layers one at a time, and it gives us a breakdown of all these data in these contexts. And it does all this automatically, so you don't have to choose which data sets you want the analysis for. It'll show you what's relevant for the regions you're working in. So we'll go back to the top here. Instead of looking at the forest change diagnostic, we're going to go to the commodity risk diagnostic, which we have for palm. Now what it's doing here is looking at some of the same kinds of data, but running it through an algorithm that analyzes the relative risk of these locations, these areas around palm oil mills. So when we're working across a landscape with a huge number of mills, it's tough to say, who's doing well, who's got some problems. And sometimes we might have hundreds of mills at a single time that we need to consider. In this case, we've got each of these variables: deforestation, peat, protected areas, fire, and likewise potential values that are relevant for the future, presence of forest, peat, protected areas, and so on. And each of them is, we get absolute values, but also relative values. And so they're color-coded, and we're given a mill priority list of high, medium, or low. This lets us look down this list. There's a total of 25 locations on this list. So across this relatively small set of mills, it's still pretty complicated to figure out what we need to know. As we scroll down, we see that there's medium and low across these. And in some places, we actually got a couple of high ones here. These might be a good place to start if we're trying to prioritize across the different locations. So there's plenty more there, and that's explained with some additional data on the palm oil mill risk tool, but we'll leave that for now. Let's go up to the dashboard, which I mentioned earlier. Dashboard takes GLAD alert data. And on GLAD alerts, what we're doing here is taking this weekly data. So we've got it separated out a little bit because this is more frequently updated. This deforestation GLAD alert data is a weekly data set that covers all of the tropics and then some between 30 degrees north and 30 degrees south. And we will look at one list at a time, and it'll show it on the map, and we'll see what's happening there. We've got both the deforestation data and fires data, which we'll show as well. So let's look at this list before, and now it's loading. So here we see the finished product. We actually briefly paused. That analysis took a little bit less than a minute because we were looking at millions of hectares. These are run in real time, unlike the other data, which are run just once when you upload them. The reason is because these are coming in every week or every day, in fact, for the fires alert, so they have to be updated in real time as well. So we did a brief pause, but we're back, and what we're seeing here are the locations in this particular list across 3 different countries, and the size of the circle here tells us how many locations of our list are in those areas, and then the color corresponds to the density of alerts. So if we want to see over a weekly, monthly, quarterly, or yearly basis, these alerts will tell us what's happening right up to the minute. We're going to look at Paraguay here. We're going to zoom in, and this is showing us across the different departments of Paraguay what's going on. We've got 4 locations in Caguasu in Paraguay, and we'll zoom in even further, and we'll look at this one here. We've got 1 location and some alerts there. So this is 13,000 alerts. That is, each alert is 30 by 30 meters, and collectively that's what's happening over the year for the entirety of the locations. That might be something we might want to take a look at. We can likewise look at fires. These are updated daily, and we can look at them on a daily or weekly basis. And likewise, we can see what's happening across these different locations. And we can zoom back out to look at that across the different countries. And then finally, a summary down at the bottom for those data. Going back up to the top, so we've now looked at the annual data in the locations, the alert data, weekly or daily for the fires in the dashboard. Let's go now to the map. So this will look quite familiar to those of you who have used globalforestwatch.org, the flagship site. It's a similar setup where we've got menus with lots of different data sets that you can turn on and off on the map, juxtapose, look at in comparison to your own lists, and also metadata. For all of them, you can see what each of these data sets are, how they were produced, who produced them, and how often they're updated, and so on. So there's quite a lot through here. You can turn on and off whatever you like. So let's look at one of these lists. Let's go now to West Africa. And we're going to look at some smallholder locations in West Africa. These are just kind of modeled locations, not actual locations. And I'm going to turn off the tree cover here, and we can see these small green locations here. These are all individual farms, and we're looking at the different data sets relative to these. Now I can turn off the annual data. These are the data year by year that you see down here at the bottom. I could also look at it year by year or any particular year. Let's turn that off for a moment, and I'm going to turn on protected areas. Here we are. And we can see that they are in the vicinity of protected areas. Some of them are overlapping. Maybe something we want to take a look at. And let's say we're curious about a protected area itself or any other polygon or kind of data that shows up. We can click on one of these locations. This is actually the forest reserve itself. We can analyze that location. We can add it to a list, and we can get some data on there directly. And then finally, let's suppose we were looking at a new area and wanted to see if it was a good spot for investment or for sourcing. We can actually draw it on here. This is also a way to get data into the system if we don't have pre-established geographic data to do so. So we could, for example, draw a sample location on here. Double click at the end, and the system will do a quick analysis of it. That's altogether about 2,1959 hectares. And since we've got the gain layer on, we can see that there were 27 hectares of gain there. But we could likewise turn on tree cover loss and turn off gain, and the analysis will adjust. We've got 130 hectares of deforestation or tree cover loss between 2001 and 2017. We can also add this location to a list, and this will take us back to the interface that we saw earlier to add this just as if it were uploaded manually. And finally, we can download data connected to this. So there's plenty here, plenty to explore. This will help contextualize and help you visualize some of the things you're seeing on an ongoing basis. You can also look at different kinds of background maps and some satellite data. This is some satellite data here. We'll also be adding some higher resolution satellite data down the line. So lots of options. So that is GFW Pro. We hope you have a good time with it. It gives you the answers you need. Please email us if you're having any problems or have any feedback for us. As I said, we'll have additional webinars, and we'll be using your feedback as content and things that we will respond to in future webinars, some of which will be live so you can interact with the people working on the system and explaining it to you. The email address is gfwprosupport@wri.org. One more time, that's gfwprosupport, SUPPORT, @wri.org. Thanks very much.